Oh, geez, Rick. It's another end of month. It's another month.
So the first thing I watched last month was Kindergarten Cop. I started off the year by watching an Arnold Schwarzenegger classic. It was on Netflix and I decided to give it a watch because the concept looked very interesting and I ended up finding it very enjoyable. All of the moments where Arnie is interacting with the children is just comedy gold, and then the rest of the film is just pretty generic. It was just like an average cop story about finding this murderer who wants to like reconnect with his long lost son. The final act was a pretty fun time, although there was this weird scene where the one police officer like walked straight into a car. Apart from that, it was a very cheesy, charming watch. I'd give it a 6.5. And then I watched X-Men, the animated series, season 1. Back in 2020, I watched all of the X-Men films apart from the New Mutants, and I had a fun time with them for the most part, even if there is some films that I didn't like. X-Men Apocalypse, X-Men Dark Phoenix, X-Men Origins Wolverine. I wanted to check this season out to see how these characters were represented back in the 90s. Also, I'm pretty sure there's like a new show coming out that's like a continuation of the 90s show coming out this year. I think this season was very mature for a kids show while still having that like Saturday morning cartoon feel. I found the animation to be surprisingly good and the character designs to be just like really colourful, and I'm pretty sure they're like reminiscent to the comics. It's just the plot lines in this show that I don't find that interesting. I think it'd work better as a season with standalone episodes. It just feels a bit messy to me when one episode tries to connect itself to the last. I do like the final 3 episodes on like the Days of Future Past stuff. I found that really interesting, especially after seeing the Days of Future Past film. The voice acting was also like really top tier from a lot of people and just made the show all the more entertaining. I had fun with it. I'd give it a 6. And then I watched Rob Zombie's Halloween. I know this isn't really the season to watch this film, but I was really interested to watch it after seeing it on the Netflix homepage. Back in 2021, I watched Halloween 1 through 4 and watched the 2018 sequel. And overall, I had a good time with all of them. And I was interested to see like a completely stylistically different take on the story from a completely stylistically different director. I found it to be like extremely mean-spirited and bleak, but a good kind of mean-spirited bleakness that just makes a movie like this work, in my opinion. The standout of this film for me was the kills, which felt just so dragged out and disturbing, with like an excruciating build-up and like a really brutal payoff that is like not afraid to cut away or anything. I think it works really well as a character study on Michael for the first half. I just love how it delves into his like backstory and upbringing, but I do think it gets a little bit weaker when the focus is taken off Michael and then more on Laurie. The final act though was very suspenseful. I found Michael in this film to be like the most terrifying out of all the Halloween films, as it like humanizes him to the point that I could see something like this happening in real life. I'd give it a 7. And then I watched season 1 of The Punisher. In 2021, I watched Daredevil. In 2022, I watched Jessica Jones and the Defenders. So I thought it was only fitting to finish the Netflix Marvel Cinematic Universe by watching The Punisher season 1 and 2. I know I didn't watch Luke Cage. I know I didn't watch Iron Fist. I can't be arsed. I kind of feel like this show started off very differently to how it ended, and I did find the plot a bit hard to understand near the start, but when I caught what was going on, I really loved it. I think it might be the most brutal out of the Marvel Netflix shows, and like how it's a continuation of where we left Frank off in season 2 of Daredevil. I like how there are returning characters from Daredevil such as Karen, but also many new faces that are really well written, especially Billy Russo, who's just a very threatening villain. His actions were like really unpredictable, and I also like his connection with Frank and how that plays into the whole season. And it ends on a very interesting place, and I was excited to see what season 2 had to offer. I'd give it a solid 9. And then I watched Whiplash. I was very eager to check this film out as I really love J.K. Simmons. He's obviously amazing as J. Jonah Jameson in Spider-Man. I loved him as Omni-Man in Invincible. I've only really seen Miles Teller from that like awful Van Forstic film. Oh, and Top Gun Maverick. And they both just deliver phenomenal performances in this film. I love how unpredictable Fletcher is in this film and how he adds just so much stakes. It just makes me as a viewer just feel so stressed when he's on screen. At the end, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of see where Fletcher is kind of coming from. I think the score is great for this film as well. Obviously, the whole jazz side of everything is great. The cinematography really adds a lot of stress to this film as well. I love the lighting. Everything is like really yellow. There's just nothing below perfect that I can pick out from this film, I'd give it a 10.5. And then I watched Get Out. This is another film that I've been wanting to see for a long time. It is in my Netflix watch list, but I just never got around to seeing it, and then I finally got around to seeing it. I saw Jordan Peele's latest film, Nope, last year, and I really loved that. And I heard this was supposed to be like his best film, and after watching it, I think it's his best film. I mean, I haven't seen Us, but Daniel Kaluuya just obviously does a great performance as his like boyfriend to this girl whose family is extremely dodgy. The rest of the performances in this film are just great as well, especially the black servants in his family who always feel like they're struggling and want to save Chris but like can't. It's just really great acting from those two actors to like pull that off. The film just does a really great job at like being very unnerving and creepy, and the climax was surprisingly very satisfying. I think I might give this film a 10. One of the best horror films I've seen. And then I watched Drive. This is another film on my Netflix watch list that I just never got around to seeing. It looked very interesting, and I have surprisingly never seen Ryan Gosling in a film before, I don't think. After watching this, I really loved it. I like the synthy score and how it like works really well with this like slow burn film. The cinematography and lighting is just really great, and I feel like there's a lot of like symbolism with how like shots are framed. And then obviously you have Mr. Gosling, the true Sigma male. He's this very cool, conflicted person who seems like very focused on his two jobs, but then he like starts to unravel and becomes more and more desperate for revenge. It's kind of like subtle but phenomenal acting from Gosling because he's playing a character that doesn't really speak that much. I like where the movie goes at the end, and although I don't think it's the most like rewatchable film, it's still very expertly made. I'd give it a 9.5. And then I watched Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Everyone was raving about this film. I wanted to watch it back in December, but I checked IMDb to see when it came out in the UK. February the 2nd. Are you taking the piss? So I just did the illegals, bro. I'm not waiting 2 months. I support the film industry, but if they're gonna do stuff like that, then I'm not supporting the film industry. I'll buy it on 4K when it comes out, but like, oh my god, seriously? Are y'all being serious right now, bro? After watching it, it was an almost perfect film to me. The animation is a big standout. It's just so fluid with the frame rates and the colours. It's just beautiful to look at. I haven't seen the first Puss in Boots in a while. I had it on DVD back in the day, but I found this to be a way better story than I remember from the first. I love the incorporation of all these fairy tale stories, and they're just woven into the plot so well. Death is just a phenomenal villain, and I love how like really dark and truly scary they get with his character at points. Obviously, Puss himself is very charming as always, and there is some really funny moments with his character. Like I said, I haven't watched Shrek films of Puss in Boots in a few years now, but I found this to be an amazing addition that teases more to come. I'm really hyped for Shrek 5 now. I think I'll give this a 9.5. And then I started watching the Burnham comedy specials, starting with What? Everyone was talking about this man a few years ago when his movie Inside came out. Back then I didn't have Netflix, so I kind of missed out on the action there. So I decided to watch the films now. The real standout of this show for me is how genius it is with its comedy. Like, I've never seen a comedy show as weird and musical as this one. Speaking of, the musical numbers are really great and clever, and there is some existentialism hidden in a lot of them, and references to depression, belief in an afterlife, like a bunch of dark stuff that I wasn't expecting to find in a comedy show. But he always manages to like turn it on its head and just make it something funny. Maybe there were some songs that went on for like a bit too long and like destroyed the pacing of the show, but apart from that, it's a very fun, in-your-face stand-up show. I'd give it a solid 8.5. And then I watched KSI In Real Life. I watch the odd Sidemen video now and again, and I've been watching like every solo video that comes out on his channel for like a few years now. His like genuine personality and sense of humour just makes some really entertaining videos. So I was really interested to check this documentary out. He almost feels like a completely different person in this documentary. He was like much quieter than expected, and I like how the documentary was taken in like the span of a year, I think, documenting like the major events in his life, like his performances and video shoots, but it gets really personal with it delving into like JJ's breakup with his girlfriend and family issues, which is really my favourite part of the documentary. The moment at the end where JJ meets his dad and talks to him after like years of just never talking to each other was just really great and satisfying, and I feel like the documentary ended in a really good place. I think the direction was really good. The chronology does get a bit messy at points, but I guess that's just how KSI is. That sounded racist. I'd give this an 8. And then I watched Bo Burnham make Happy. Obviously, after watching What, I had to watch the next stand-up show, which I thought was a very nice improvement. I think it has a slower pace and deals with more existential stuff. The songs, I feel, are just so much funnier and memorable than the last stand-up special, and it just ends on such a fantastic ending. I haven't seen many stand-up specials in my life. I haven't seen many stand-up specials in my lifetime, but I know this is one of the greats. I think I'll give it a 10. And then I watched Dumb and Dumber. I had this film on DVD back in the day. I used to watch it a bunch. Coming back to this film, there's surprisingly a lot that I didn't remember, which I guess made the experience more fun. Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels just have so much chemistry and just a lot of comedic talent. That makes a lot of scenes that seem unfunny and ridiculous to be funny and ridiculous. The story of the film is just so great, and it always manages to be entertaining with these two as the leads. The humour can get a bit too stupid at points, but there are just so many laugh out loud moments that it just kind of overshadows the jokes that didn't land for me. The soundtrack is also really great for a comedy film as well. You've got Crash Test Dummies, you've got The Primitives. I'd give it a 9. Classic comedy film. And then I watched Megan. I was very interested to see this film since everyone was talking about it, and I just had so much fun with this film. I like how the film doesn't take itself too seriously and has some genuinely funny moments in there. Obviously, James Wan is producing this, who is one of my favourite horror directors, and he brings just a lot of unique flair to this film. The ending was just so crazy and wacky. There was like 5 fake out deaths from Megan in that final act. I think the idea of Megan is just really great, and she's really entertaining to see on screen, even when she isn't killing people. I just love the technology aspect of the film and where they took it. Maybe they went a bit too far with the idea of like technology corrupts your brain or whatever, and I heard beforehand that they cut this film down to achieve a PG-13 rating, which is very evident in a lot of the death scenes. They're just way too choppy and messy, and I just hope we get the original R-rated cut when the film gets released physically. I'd give it an 8. And then I watched the main event, Bo Burnham's Inside. I guess this is like the final film to the Bo Burnham specials. This probably being like the most creative and ambitious due to it being filmed during lockdown. Like he said himself in the special, it is a bit messy and all over the place, but I think it works with a theme and a message like this one. The special hardly feels like a comedy at points, dealing with a lot of topics that he talks about in his previous specials, but then Bo like reflects this stuff onto the audience, which is now not a live viewer in the audience like in his live specials, but me, which is just why I think this special is just so ingenious. The cinematography and the things he manages to achieve in just this one room was great as well. How he just managed to transform the room to convey different feelings and atmospheres. I like how it can be kind of viewed as a documentary as well, showing Bo's like declining mental health over the filming of the documentary. I like how the ending was open-ended and it could be interpreted in like many different ways. The songs are also very funny and great, but I'm kind of expecting that from Bo at this point. I'd give this 9.5. Then I watched the Inside Outtakes, which is like a DLC to Inside. It has like extra songs and more like behind the scenes stuff, which I like to see. It still has great editing and direction from Bo himself, and there are some skits in here that could have worked well in the final film. I also like how, because it came out on YouTube, it has like all these fake ads and fake pop-ups that are just really fun. I actually think this is almost as good as the final film. I'd give it an 8.5. And then I finished watching The Punisher season 2. I didn't like this season as much. I just found the writing to be much lazier at points, and the villain, like this the religious guy, I just found him to be very boring and uninteresting for the most part. I just think like the middle part of this season just fell into like a really boring slump, and all the stuff with the Frank and the girl and all the stuff with Billy Russo is pretty good as well, although Amnesia is a pretty lazy way to like change his character. The first episode was engaging, the last few episodes had some amazing action set pieces, but overall I just don't think it has the stakes and the tension of that last season, and I just think it's pretty boring. I'd give it a 6. So that's everything that I've watched in the month of January. I'm currently watching The Last of Us. Everyone's currently watching The Last of Us, I think. It's great. I haven't played the games. Surprisingly, I've never played the games because I don't own a PlayStation. I'm really loving the show so far. The acting, cinematography, lighting, it's just perfect so far. I'm 4 episodes in and I'm excited to see where the show goes from here. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you didn't, please leave a dislike, and I will see you in the next video.